the mystery of the sunken ship. Have you ever come across something so haunting and perplexing that it changes your entire perspective on reality? That's exactly what happened to us during what was supposed to be a relaxing river trip. What began as a pleasant float down a tranquil waterway quickly devolved into a chilling encounter with an ancient enigma. Our seemingly simple expedition led us to the remains of an old sunken ship half buried in the muddy river. As we ventured into the decaying vessel, we discovered a captain's diary that detailed a sequence of eerie and horrifying events leading up to the ship's tragic demise. What we unearthed in those pages revealed a story of supernatural dread and cryptic foreboding that we could never have anticipated. Today had begun with idyllic weather, clear skies, a gentle breeze, and the promise of a peaceful outing. Our group of friends, eager for a weekend of leisure, set out in a rented canoe. The river wound through a lush, verdant forest, its surface occasionally disturbed by the calls of distant birds or the rustling of unseen creatures. Our laughter and conversation filled the air as we drifted along, our spirits buoyed by the beauty of the surroundings. It was during this carefree journey that we stumbled upon something out of the ordinary. A dark shape emerged from the water, partially obscured by tangled vines and creeping algae. As we drew nearer, it became evident that we were looking at the remains of a shipwreck. The vessel's skeletal frame protruded from the river like a monstrous ribcage, its once proud hull now twisted and broken. The rotting sails had long since disappeared, replaced by a thick layer of greenish mold and moss that clung to the timbers. We anchored the canoe and gingerly climbed onto the decaying deck, which felt surprisingly sturdy despite its apparent age. The surface was slick with a thick layer of moss and decayed plant matter, and the air was heavy with the musty, stagnant odor of decay and neglect. My best friend Eric, his girlfriend Laura, and our friends Mike and Jess. Curiosity drove us to explore the shipwreck despite the growing sense of unease. The ship's hull had split open in several places, revealing dark, shadowy voids where the river had seeped in. We ventured inside, our flashlights casting jittery beams across the walls. The interior was a chaotic jumble of discarded objects, rusty lanterns hanging from twisted hooks, shattered furniture strewn across the floor, and tattered clothing rotting away in heaps. The air was thick with dust, and the faint creaking of the ship seemed almost deliberate, as if the vessel itself were alive and watching us. The shadows, distorted by our flashlight beams, seemed to dance and move of their own accord. We made our way to the captain's quarters, which, surprisingly, was in better condition than the rest of the ship. The door creaked open to reveal a small, cluttered room. The walls were lined with faded maps and yellowed nautical charts, and a large desk dominated the space. In this desk, partially obscured by a thick layer of dust, lay an old leather-bound book. Its cover was cracked and worn, and the pages were yellowed and brittle. This book was a diary, and its very presence seemed to heighten the room's already palpable sense of foreboding. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, I opened the diary. The handwriting inside was a spidery scrawl, uneven and frantic but still legible. The early entries detailed routine observations about the ship's voyages and the captain's daily activities. However, as I turned the pages, the tone of the diary shifted from mundane to disturbing. The entries began to describe strange occurrences, unexplained noises, crew members behaving erratically, and an all-encompassing sense of dread that seemed to pervade the ship. One entry stood out in particular. September 12th, 1894. The ship has been feeling wrong for days now. Strange noises emanate from the hold, as if something or someone is moving about unseen. The crew whispers of shadows that don't belong to anyone. I dismissed it as overactive imaginations until tonight. I saw it myself, a figure in the moonlight just outside the cabin watching us. When I looked again, it was gone. I fear that something is terribly wrong. As we continued reading, the entries grew increasingly unsettling. The captain detailed the crew's growing paranoia, noting how several men had vanished under mysterious circumstances. The diary spoke of a passenger who had joined the voyage despite the captain's reservations, a man who claimed to possess dark knowledge and had insisted on boarding the ship against all objections. This passenger's presence seemed to have brought with it a malevolent influence. The diary described a series of horrifying events: an unexpected storm that lashed the ship with ferocious winds and rain, strange symbols painted in blood across the deck, and frantic pleas for help that went unanswered. The final entries were particularly chilling. October 2nd, 1894. The storm has ravaged us. We are adrift and the crew is mostly gone. Only a few of us remain. We found strange symbols etched into the walls of the hold. They seem to pulse with a dark energy. I found the captain's log hidden in a secret compartment, and it speaks of the same symbols. I don't know if they're real or just the ravings of a deranged mind. The curse is real. I know it now. Something is coming. We must prepare for the end. The diary concluded with a hastily scrawled entry. We've seen it now. It's here. God help us. As I closed the diary, an eerie chill seemed to settle over the captain's quarters. The air grew colder, and the distant sound of water dripping from the ship's hull created an unsettling rhythm that seemed to echo through the room. We exchanged uneasy glances, each of us feeling the oppressive weight of the diary's dark revelations. The shipwreck, once an intriguing curiosity, now seemed a sinister relic, its broken structure whispering secrets from a long-forgotten past. The river, which had seemed so peaceful earlier, now felt like a dark expanse concealing ancient horrors beneath its surface. The setting sun cast long, menacing shadows over the wrecked ship, enhancing its ghostly aura. We knew that we had uncovered something that should have remained buried. The diary's cryptic warnings and the ship's ominous presence left us profoundly unsettled. As we prepared to leave, the fading light of day seemed to amplify the ship's haunting presence. With one final, lingering look at the sunken vessel, we left its haunted remnants behind. Yet, we were unaware that this was only the beginning. The diary's cryptic messages and the ship's dark history would soon lead us to an unexpected and terrifying confrontation with the supernatural forces that still lingered from its tragic past. The next part of our story will delve deeper into the chilling mysteries revealed by the diary, as we confront the eerie and malevolent forces that have haunted the ship. Stay tuned for the second part of the mystery of the sunken ship. The night after our discovery, the tranquility of our river campsite seemed eerily altered. The diary's grim accounts weighed heavily on our minds, and sleep came fitfully, if at all. Every creak of the tent, every rustle of the leaves, seemed to echo with the unresolved mysteries of the sunken ship. Despite our best efforts to dismiss it as mere imagination, the haunting presence of the ship lingered in our thoughts. As dawn broke, we decided to return to the wreck to investigate further. The river, shrouded in morning mist, looked deceptively calm, but the air was thick with an unsettling silence. Our group was now more cautious, our previous excitement tempered by the ominous tone of the diary. With grim determination, we paddled back to the shipwreck. The sight of the ship in the daylight was no less disturbing. The sun's rays barely pierced through the thick canopy of trees, casting long, ghostly shadows over the water. The ship seemed even more foreboding, its fractured hull and twisted metal glinting dully in the weak sunlight. We approached with a mix of dread and curiosity, aware that we were treading into the heart of something profoundly unsettling. We re-entered the captain's quarters, where the diary had been found. The room now felt colder, and the shadows seemed deeper, as if the darkness had taken root in the very walls. We carefully examined the ship once more, hoping to uncover additional clues that might explain the diary's cryptic references. Laura, who had been quietly flipping through the diary again, has called us over with a hushed voice. "There's something we missed," she said, pointing to a section we had overlooked. The entry detailed a final, desperate attempt to break the ship's curse. October 4th, 1894. The symbols have changed. They move when you're not looking. The crew is gone, only I remain. I've tried to remove the symbols, but they keep reappearing. The passenger, the one who brought the curse, has gone mad. He mutters about a final reckoning. I fear we are all doomed. We're about to discuss this new revelation when a sudden, intense chill swept through the room. It was as though the temperature had dropped drastically in an instant. Our breath formed misty clouds in the cold air, and a faint, echoing whisper seemed to reverberate through the ship. We shivered, glancing around in alarm. Eric, ever the skeptic, tried to lighten the mood. "Maybe it's just a draft," he suggested, though his voice betrayed his own unease. But none of us were convinced. The oppressive atmosphere had become almost tangible, and the sense of being watched was inescapable. Determined to find more answers, we focused on the symbols mentioned in the diary. We began a more thorough search of the ship's hold, where the diary had noted that the symbols were most prominent. The hold was a dark, cavernous space, filled with rotting cargo and the stench of decay. Using our flashlights, we inspected the walls, our beams revealing faint, cryptic symbols etched into the wood. The symbols were intricate and disturbing, twisted shapes and unfamiliar runes that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. It was as if they were alive, pulsating with a sinister energy. As we traced their outlines with our fingers, we felt the strange vibration under our skin, as though the symbols were resonating with an unseen force. Jess, who had been examining the symbols closely, suddenly let out a gasp. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a hidden panel behind a stack of old crates. With great effort, we pried it open, revealing a small compartment. Inside lay an assortment of old artifacts. An ornate dagger with a jewel-encrusted hilt, a tarnished brass compass, and a weathered scroll. The scroll was marked with more of the strange symbols, and as we unrolled it, we found that it was covered in hastily scribbled notes. The notes appeared to be a frantic account of the ship's final days, written by the passenger who had brought the curse. They detailed a ritual performed to bind the supernatural entity that had been unleashed, but it seemed that the ritual had failed catastrophically. October 6th, 1894,